We're on page 149, the way to acquire, achieve Hasidus. We're in the middle of the page. This is in the Art Scroll version. So how do you acquire Hasidus? So it starts off with the first man. To achieve this, a person is necessary for a person to have solitude, and to gather all his thinking of tvunato and his intelligence el hasichlus to this understanding, and to this delving into the truth of these matters. Now remember, this is the first man. And the first man sees Hasidus, or this level. We talked about that, where he sees it as, but nevertheless he sees it as achieving this relationship with God by appreciating how great God is. Not that that's minimizing that one iota, but nevertheless, it's no small thing. And so to achieve this level, a person really needs a lot of alone time to be able to think about. Now I should point out that this is already a hint that the Mesilat Yesharim is telling you, is this is not really the ideal. This is not the way to go. We don't promote hermits and living that kind of isolated lifestyle. It's not the program. This is not Judaism. So, and the fact that he points out that it's it requires, to be able to achieve this, you have to go to such extremes, is the hint that this is not the way to go, and it's definitely not for everybody, because not everybody is going to be able to find the time and the capacity to be able to do such a thing. But anyway, that's the first man. To whatever degree he can achieve it, whatever degree he can do that, to varying degrees, to be able to go and be by yourself and to think about, because the world is confusing, and when you're involved, engaged in the world, then you lose track of who you are and what life is all about. Right? Now, I should point out, just a little bit of a, right, that I don't know if I've ever met anybody who did not need now and again a certain amount of time to get away from it all.
We can use that daily now.
Right. But you see, that's a good, if the more you need it, the more you should appreciate how much your life isn't working. Nothing personal. Some of my best friends, their lives aren't working. But
wouldn't you say hundreds of millions of people's lives are not working because of this little device right here?
Yeah, that's a good point. Exactly. Right? We're constantly available 24/7. Right, so now that's the first man. So now what's the second man? V'hinei v'dai shi'ozuchu lezeh, what will help him to achieve this goal, Rav Hasmada, a lot of diligence, ve'iyun, and deep thinking, but Mizmorei David, in the Psalms, the Psalms of David. Love Shalom, peace be upon him. And when you think about them, in their words and their ideas, because the reality is, kulam mali'im ahava, they're all filled with love and fear, but kol minei chasidus, all types of chasidus. Hinei behispalanubam, and when a person contemplates them, lo yimana, you will not be held back. His mitzorer, stirrings. How does he translate that? Inspiration, for the inspiration, and Hisarus Godol, great inspiration. Being Kavosav in the because go out in the footsteps and to go in his path. Right? There, it's very interesting. I went to a talk by Mordechai Rabashkin. I think that's his name. Shalom Mordechai Rabashkin, something like that, or Mordechai Shalom Rabashkin. I forget his first name. Right? It's phenomenal. It really, if you get a chance to go hear him speak, you go hear him speak. Very, very inspirational.
Is he the one who was in jail?
It was in jail, right? Exactly. So he talked about trauma. Now, he didn't say. I've heard him say this story before. He didn't talk about it the other night, but I've heard him talk about this. I've heard him speak a few times, and he said after there was one particular person who helped pay. Like he had all kinds of expenses because the government really, it was tremendously anti-Semitic what they did to him. The judge gave him 2 more years, 27 years sentence in a high security prison.
Wow, dangerous guy. Wow, he's a murderer, a killer.
Exactly.
Like really?
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. The judge gave him 2 more years than the prosecution asked for. The prosecution, the judge sentenced him, and he wasn't even in the court, which is totally illegal. And
Wait, who wasn't in the court?
He wasn't in the court. They called him up and said, the judge just sentenced you.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they did all kinds of crazy stuff that was totally out of line. And so anyway, he's in prison for 8.5 years. So there was one particular guy. Lots of people sent financial help, but there's one particular guy that really helped him out and covered all kinds of expenses because they closed down his bank and he went into bankruptcy and all kinds of crazy stuff. So there's one particular guy who really helped him out financially, and he went to see him. And this guy, everyone's got their thing, like some people golf, some people tennis, me it's a yo-yo, everyone's got their thing. Ukulele, sorry. So everyone's got their thing. So this guy, he particularly finds it meaningful to give money to people who are put in prison for the wrong reason, and he helps them out. So he didn't mention his name or anything. I think he wants to stay anonymous. So he went to meet him. So when he got out, he said to Rabashkin, "Do you need me to pay for you? I'll pay for it to get therapy." So he said, "What do I need therapy for?" He says, "Because when people come out, they're in such shock." I visited once. I've been a couple of times, but he was in a more serious prison. It wasn't a high security prison, but nevertheless, it wasn't pleasant, and it's very jarring. If you're used to not living in a prison, so so what he must have gone through was just crazy. So and he's walking around for 8.5 years with murderers. I mean, these people are like really serious stuff, right? He said not one time did he get beaten up by the inmates. The guards beat him up a couple of times, but the inmates didn't. Right?
That's like the exact opposite of what you would expect.
Yeah, exactly what he said. So he said trauma only happens. He said a very fascinating thing. Trauma only happens if you're not expecting it.
You mean he was expecting the guards to beat him up, so he was not shocked?
No, he had betachon. If you're trusting God, then everything's happening for a reason. It's meaningful. But you see, we're all walking around with this expectation of how life should be. I mean, you see it today in the 21st century. There's so many kids who are in shock that their life isn't working the way they think it should work because they've been raised on stupid Hollywood movies about how life should go, and it's just totally out of reality. So they're in trauma. People have PTSD. You don't have PTSD. You don't have trauma if you live with God, because anything can happen. You know, that's the way it goes. And I've seen that, you know, many times. I always like to tell the story. You know, my father may live to 120.
Right.
Thank you. He was a little boy in the Blitz of London, and he told me that when as a little boy he used to sleep in the train station in the underground, and then you know, when they would come out of the train station, he'd walk over dead bodies. Right? You know, people, and today people are traumatized. You know, the cat died, you know, the wrong president got elected, or I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, they're just traumatized. People are traumatized because, you know, I mean, that's the whole transgender thing going on at the moment. Is that people are traumatized because life isn't going the way they think it should go. They don't know how to handle it, and psychiatrists are just bending over backwards to try and appease them. So he says, I never had trauma. Walked out of prison. It's like I just moved on. Right? So that's what that is a beginning of understanding what he's talking about when you, and this is a distinction between the first man. The first man is contemplate the greatness of God. Right? The second man is contemplate the greatness of life. The Almighty is with us. And who do you learn this from? From David. If anybody's going to have trauma, it's going to be David. David was born. His father was the Gadol. The Talmud says there are 10 people that never died. One of them is David's father. So he's no small fry. His father thought he was illegitimate, that his mother had an affair. She didn't, but he thought, you know, the whole family, he was an outcast. They threw him out. Right? His own son tried to kill him. Right? Avshalom.
Okay, David's own son tried to kill him. I got a little confused.
Right? Is that the king tried to kill him? Shaul. Right? His best friend, Jonathan, was killed. Right? He had a very, very, very tough life. Lots of places there for him to say, "Oh, woe is me! Why is this happening to me? God's against me." Right? My life is tough, and he doesn't. He understands this idea. The Almighty is with you. Everything's here for meaning. There's no accidents. The Almighty is taking care of it. Don't worry about it. So that's the second man. When you live like that, you don't need a vacation. In other words, right? Nobody, you know, you win the lottery. Do you need a vacation? I can't handle it. Right? It's absurd. Right? Picture, you know, just make a list. It's a very powerful thing to do. But just make a list of what would have to happen for you to say life doesn't get any better than this. It's a very powerful tool. Right? You know, if you've seen my video, life doesn't get any better than this. Right? You can watch it on getbliss.com. But everybody should ask themselves, what would have to happen for you to say life doesn't get any better than this? Right? And if you think about it, nothing would really change. I always use the example of the lottery. Right? People won the lottery. Their life, then they'll be happy. You never saw anyone win the lottery who are miserable. Right? Oh no, I won the lottery. All of a sudden you win the lottery, all your problems disappear. Right? Now the truth of the matter is you win the lottery, nothing changed. When are the changes going to happen? When you get the money. By the time you got the lottery, so how you think about life changes how you experience life. So we can think about life in ways that make life work, or we can't. It's up to us. That's the second man. You got it? That's what's holding us back. So what's the third man? V'ken to'il hakriya b'sipur ma'aseh chasidim. Right, now this is fascinating because what will help? The reading of the stories of the reading in the books of the stories of the Hasidim, the Agadot in the storybooks, or the collections, the anecdotes, Asher Busham, right? What they bring there. Because all of these things stir up the intelligence or inspire the intelligence. And will advise you or give you intelligence. Very interesting language. We'll talk about it. We'll come back. But to do their most beautiful actions. And this is clear. So what's the third man? The first man is go into a lonely room, find a cave somewhere. The second man says, read Tehillim. Right? The third man says, read the stories of people who did wonderful things. Read the great stories. Hafetz Chaim, the Chazon Ish, the Vilna Gaon. Read their stories. Read the stories of people who did tremendous things. Right? The present, what's his name? Eli Bear. Right? The guy started Hatzalah. Many other, right? Shnira, Rav Noach, obviously, right? All these people, when you read their stories, that's what's going to get you going. And he says it in language very different than the second man. It's going to give you the wisdom, the intelligence. It doesn't use the word wisdom. The advice. It's going to advise you how to be able to do it. So there's a very famous Chazal. That the Talmud says that in the next world, God's going to ask you various questions. And one of the questions he's going to ask you is, did you learn Torah? And there's going to be three different groups that are going to have answers. The poor people, the rich people, and the evil people. So the poor people are going to say, we didn't learn Torah. Why? Because we didn't learn Torah because we were busy poor. I'm not talking about poor like, I can't afford a big screen TV poor. I mean poor like, you don't have food for dinner tonight, right? That kind of poor, right? Really, the tough stuff, right? So you're constantly struggling, borrowing money, paying it back, asking for friends, running over here to get food pantry, and you got a family to feed, and it's very tough. And the shoes are your shoes are broken, and the electricity goes out, and blah 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 blah. When you're really dirt poor, so they said we were dirt poor. We had to go. So they're going to call out the great Hillel. God's going to call out the great Hillel, and he's going to say, "Look, Hillel could do it. You could do it, right, folks?" So the question is, why does he need to call out Hillel? Why does he need to call out anybody? Why does God say, grow up, get a life? I know you could have done it. I don't like these excuses, right? When, right? Whatever God does in the next world. Right? Why do we need Hillel? And the answer is, it's very similar. You've heard me talk about this before. Roger Bannister, the first person to run the 4-minute mile in recorded history, was Roger Bannister. In almost 100 years, no one could do it. But within 6 weeks of him doing it, someone ran faster. I met somebody who did it in high school. So what happened? What happened? You see, this is what it means that all men are created equal. We understand that if someone else could do this, then I can do it too. Like he's made it the same. Intuitively, we connect. If he can do it, I can do it. We're made of the same goo. So when you see Hillel, you realize you could do it. when Roger Bannister did it, all of a sudden you could do it. Now you go to the guy who's running the 4-minute mile in 4 minutes and 5 seconds. And that's about approximately what the next guy after them could do. 4 minutes, I forget exactly the speed, but it's 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Right? You're running at tremendous speeds. I mean, the world record today is only 15 seconds faster than Roger Bannister set it, which is in 1954. So you're really talking about the edge of what a human being can do. So the guy who's doing it 4 minutes 5 seconds, he really believes there's nothing more in him. He can't do it any faster. He really believes it. Right? In my book, I talk about Laura Schultz, right? 63-year-old, right? You read the book? 63-year-old woman.
Went to college.
Went to college after this, right? Picked up a Buick. How did she pick up a Buick? Her grandson was pinned under. This is the day when Buicks were Buicks, not the winter cars we have today. Right? This is a very heavy car. I mean, a Buick is a heavy car even today, but in those days it was a tank, right? And she picked up a Buick. So if you'd gone and asked her, do you think you can pick up a Buick? She would have said you're crazy. When you are focused on what you have to do, you can cross all kinds of boundaries. So when you read David HaMelech, and with everything that he went through, and he's saying these things, so you can say it too. Right? Sorry, no, the third man is not David HaMelech. The third man is the stories. When you read the stories of people who did these incredible things, Rabashkin, right? He's in prison 8.5 years, right? There's B'tachon. There's not a problem. He's not stressed. This is the way God wanted me. He tells a fantastic story. People used to write to him from all over the world. So when the mailman would come in, he would call out people's names, and people would come collect mail, and everyone was like gathered around. And he used to get lots of mail every single day, and everyone else at best would get one piece. Most of them get nothing. Right? So one day he's walking along in the hall or something, and he says it like this. He says, this guy must have been Einstein's second cousin, right? So he comes up to me in a very thick Italian Brooklyn accent, and he says, "Oi, Rabashkin, why are you taking everybody's mail?" So Rabashkin doesn't know what he's talking about. What do you mean taking everybody's mail? Like, I got my mail, you got your mail. Oh, you didn't get any mail. He says, no, you're taking everyone's mail. It's like, you're passing out the jelly beans. One for you, one for you, one for you, 10 for him. So if I didn't get 10 to him, you'll get 2 or 3 more. So he thinks, like, you got all the mail. Right, you understand? And so he's trying to explain to this guy, right, Einstein's second cousin, that even if I wasn't there, you wouldn't get any more mail. Right? But this guy, he's not used to such sophisticated concepts. And he can't get it. And the guy's meaning business. Like, give me my mail or we're gonna be in trouble here. We're gonna have to sort this out. So Rabashkin gets an insight and he pulls out one of his letters and he says, listen, even if you got my mail, you couldn't read it. Because it's in Yiddish. And he gives it to him. And he can't read it, obviously. And with that, the guy leaves him alone.
Cynical.
You understand? So Rabashkin afterwards, he says, the Almighty sent me a message. He was teaching me a lesson. I'm walking around in the prison 8.5 years. I don't have a life. My kids are growing up, the whole thing. My neighbors, my friends, my family, they're all walking around outside perfectly fine. I got sent to prison. I got the rap for something that was crazy. Some anti-Semite wanted to go get a Jew boy. So I am stuck in prison. Why don't you understand? He says, no, you don't understand, right? You see what this guy was expressing, the Italian, was expressing what we all think, or I think, I should say. right? I see someone driving a Bentley, I'm thinking, that's my Bentley. Hey, come here. So he's trying to, so Vashka said, no, even if you got the Bentley, it's like having someone else's mount. It wouldn't do anything for you. Someone else's life, that's their life. It wouldn't do anything for you. Right? It says when you bring in Vayikra, it says when you bring a korban, you have to bring a korban with the same kavana that Adam Arishon, the first man, brought a korban. What was that? Just like Adam Arishon, the first man, brought a korban, brought a sacrifice. It wasn't stolen. So too, you should bring a sacrifice that isn't stolen. That's the only thing you have to do. You think when we have korbanos, right? You have a kosher chicken. All kinds of things have to go in to make sure this chicken's kosher. Right? In the good old days, you used to take your chicken to the shochet, to the slaughterer, and it was a whole to-do. Today, we just go over to the supermarket and pick out the frozen one, right? This one, I want this one, this a bit, that a leg. I want a chicken with 5 legs. They can get chicken with 5 legs. I want a chicken with 5 legs, right? So we're spoiled. But to bring a korban, you don't think there's going to be all kind. The only thing it says, the only thing you have to worry about, make sure it's not stolen. What do you mean not stolen? Adam Arishon couldn't steal anyway. Why not?
It was his, basically.
There's nothing to steal from. So it's telling you that's how you should think when you bring a korban, when you bring a sacrifice. Right? Whatever you have, you can't have what anyone else has. It's like you're the only person in the universe. This is it. Just the Almighty put you with other people, but even if they weren't there, you wouldn't get their mail. Right? You get what you have. That's what the Almighty wants you to have. This is what's meaningful, fulfilling for you. What they have is for them. You would never, even if they weren't there, you wouldn't get their Bentley. You wouldn't get their mail. So when we read these stories, it awakens us. These are the things that awaken us to who we could possibly be. Other people in the world have achieved things. They are signals, they are lessons, they are instruments to help us be who we can be. If you read the story, that will awaken you to be who you can be. You don't need the vacation. You don't need a vacation. You don't need to study Tehillim. You just read the stories. Just listen, read, learn it. Listen to Rabashkin. There's a very good podcast, Living L'Chaim. Right? They have some great interviews in there. Right? The real blow-away stuff about what people put up with and live through. And when you read these stories, you realize it's not just you can put up with what you're going through. That what you're going through is meaningful too. This is our program that the Almighty is putting us in. There's a great, let me show you, there's a phenomenal Mishlei. Let me read it to you. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Phenomenal Mishlei. Listen to this. Chapter 3, verse 11. Musa Hashem b'ni altimas. The discipline, how's he translate? The chastisement of Hashem, don't reject. Don't despise. But altikot, and don't reject his rebuke, his tochacha. Ki et asher yachev Hashem, yochir. For those who God loves, he rebukes. Ka'av et ben yitzah, like a father who rebukes, like a father to a loving son. Right? So Rashi comes along and says, Musa Hashem, right? The Musa Hashem, the discipline of God, is when you're going through difficult things, this is Hashem's discipline. God's a big God. He could give everyone $1 billion, 400 servants, a Bentley, big house, lots of food, comfy chairs, right? They could do all of those things, right? Why are we going through what we're going through? This is his Musa. This is his discipline. We're on a program to make us greater people. So Rashi says, if suffering comes upon you, Yeh chavivim elecha. It should be dear to you. It should be dear to you, right? So you see, these guys are in prison. All these guys are in prison. And what do they miss? Connection. Right? All the pleasures of this world boil down to two categories. There's nothing outside these two categories. We've talked about this before. One of them is connection. So with all the stuff that these guys are in prison, right? The hardened criminals, sophistication like a dead rat, right? They got nothing. There's no, like simplistic beyond simplistic. No thinking whatsoever, no discernment whatsoever. Yet they all want connection. Just a letter to feel a connection. What's the connection? The troubles you're going through in life. So why do we struggle with them? Because we think that there's no point to them.
We only think that if we don't believe in God.
What's that?
We would only think that if we don't believe in God.
That's right. So on some level, we don't believe in God. Right? We see this in this week's Parsha, Chukas. God comes to Moshe and says, you don't believe in me. So there's levels. And he hit the rock instead of speaking to it. You follow? Now listen to what Mishlei says. Right? Because who does God rebuke? Only those he loves. In other words, I'm sure, well, I'll tell you, there are people in this world I don't particularly care for. No one on this call. Don't worry about it. Right? You follow? But I don't tell them. Right? Is that I don't go to say, listen, I want you to know. I think you're an idiot. And you're ugly too. Right? Right? You follow? You might have people like that too. Like, why? Because the people I don't like, I don't bother with. Right? Rabbi Belsky, he tells us a phenomenal story about his father-in-law. There's one day his father-in-law wasn't in shul. And it's very worried. He was very elderly. It wasn't in shul, he was elderly. They can't find him anywhere. Eventually, they find him on the street, blabbering like a madman. They can't console him. He's a big Talmud Chacham, right? That he's like, going crazy. So finally get him to calm down. What's the matter? He says, this is the first time in my entire life I have enough money for 2 months' rent. 2 months' rent. I forget exactly the numbers, but something like that. 2 months' rent.
And that was a problem?
He says, obviously, the Almighty is paying me off in this world. I'm getting my schar in this world, my reward in this world. He was besides himself. That's the way to live, right? You understand? So everyone's got their level, everyone's got their thing, right? Everyone's got their thing. So there's a mitzvah in the Torah to give someone rebuke. You have to rebuke your husband. I hope you're doing this.
Daily.
Good.
Hourly.
You gotta keep those mitzvahs going, right? You know? Right? Now the mitzvah, you're only allowed to rebuke somebody if you think they can get through. Right? If you don't think you're going to get through, the Talmud says, just like there's a mitzvah, Mr. Yesharim brings it down, just like there's a mitzvah to say something when it needs to be said, so too there's a mitzvah to not say it when it won't be heard. Right? This applies to your children too. Right? You're not allowed to, if you can't give them a rebuke if you don't think you can get through. Right? Just because you're bent out of shape or you're frustrated doesn't give you license to go tell them, right? There's a mitzvah to give rebuke. Right? When do you give rebuke?
Yeah, sometimes you have to repeat things before it goes through.
That's part of the whole program. I have to get through. I have to tell my kids, brush your teeth. So part of the whole program is, a parent's secret weapon is nagging. That's how you get through. That's part of what you're supposed to do, right? Parents call me and say, I have to nag my kid. Well, who else is going to nag them? Right? That's part of what your job definition is. You don't like it. You think you're just like, people think the parenting is like sheep herding. I just get the whistle and the sheepdog takes the sheep, and if they come in without any problems, I did a good job. No, parenting is instilling a concept, and you have to say it over and over and over again. That's part of the whole mitzvah, right? But if you know you're not going to get through, you don't say anything. If you think you can get through, okay, go for it. But you got to have a reasonable, you got to think through, how am I going to say it, etc., etc., etc. Right? A lot of people just don't want to say anything because they don't want to say anything. But if you think you can get through, you have to say something. You follow? If you know you're going to get through, for sure. You follow? Now, if the Almighty is giving us rebuke, if the suffering we're going through is tohacha, is rebuke, right? Then what? It must mean that the things that we're going through are for sure going to be effective. Because the Almighty wouldn't give us rebuke, tohacha, unless he knew that it was going to work. Who knows if it's going to work? For sure, he knows it's going to work. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it. So people say, like, maybe I'm going to fail the test. You can't fail the test. If you could fail the test, the Almighty wouldn't give you the tohacha, wouldn't give you the rebuke. So we're all in the program. Whatever you're going through, as difficult as it might be, as challenging as it might be, is nevertheless taking you to a great place. The more you understand that, the more you'll be infused. So you'll go through it with a sense of purpose. It's meaningful. That's the third man.
And you look at the tzaddikim to see how they did that?
Yeah, right, exactly. Right? I don't know if I talked about this, about trauma. Did I talk about this? Yeah.
Rashkin, yeah.
So Rashkin said, right, I talked about the beginning, right? It didn't have trauma. Right? I met somebody who was a Mengele twin. Right? He wouldn't have known it. Nicest guy. As far as I could tell, no trauma. It's very interesting. I was in England, and my nephew, despite my protestations, was becoming a psychiatrist. There are lots of good psychiatrists, and we need good psychiatrists. So, but a lot of the stuff they read is just junk. Now I picked up one of his books on trauma. And it's such silliness. They have no idea what trauma is. They don't know why someone has trauma and doesn't have trauma. They don't even know it. They can't tell if you have trauma. Right? They don't. It's all hidden. Only if you. It's just crazy stuff, right? Rabashka said, "I didn't have trauma. Trauma is only because you don't expect things to go the way they went. If you trust in God, if you realize that we're not in control, we're on the Almighty's program. Okay, that's what the great thing about Avram. He went through all these tests and he didn't complain. That's the test. They went through all these things. God promised him all kinds of things, and his wife was taken from him. Right? Famine hits. Right? He has to kill his son. It never says what's going on here. Right?
In essence, you're saying that trauma is if you're going against God's will.
That's that then you're going to get trauma. Yes, you're right. That's very good.
Sort of like you're going against reality. Reality is God's in charge.
Right.
And if you want to fight that, then be prepared to be traumatized.
That's exactly right. Right. And you see, right, fascinating thing, the more easier that they make life for everybody, the more trauma people are going through. Because you can never make life easy enough. Right? What's a perfect example? Harry. The guy's traumatized.
Harry?
Harry. You know Harry. Right?
Oh, the second son.
The second son. Right? His spare. Right? Right? He's born into the lap of luxury. I mean, this guy could have just dreamed, 99.9999% of all humanity will switch their lives in an instant. And he's traumatized because it's not exactly what he wanted.
He traumatized?
Yeah, he's traumatized.
How do we know?
Because he writes about it, he talks about it. It's like he can't, he's incomplete, he feels like victimized, and it's terrible what they did to him. What did they do to him? His feet never touched the ground, right? Everybody's traumatized because no matter how easy you make your life, if you're not living with God, you're going to be life is never going to work out because God runs the world. We're on a program. It's not going to work out. You've got to grow. You've got to deal with life. You've got to find yourself. You've got to be somebody.